As the fight against opioid addiction continues in Central Texas, there's now a national debate over what to call a drug fatality, overdose, or poisoning. That's the focus of a recent New York Times article by Jan Hoffman. And Jan is joining us this afternoon to give us some insight. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So why is there a push now from grieving families for public health leaders, prosecutors, as well as politicians to use the term poisoning instead of overdosing when recording those official drug fatalities?
I think there are at least two reasons. Most of these fatalities occur because someone has taken a pill of something they thought was a common medicine, like Percocet or Xanax, and it turns out to be laced with fentanyl. So in the family's perception, that person did not intend to take fentanyl and was essentially poisoned. They feel that poisoning captures the victim nature of that, the unintentionality of that death. And more importantly, they fear that the word overdose is front loaded with stigma, and they don't want that stigma to be associated with the person they loved, who in many of these situations is a teenager or a young adult who was, yes, buying something either illegally or given something at a party, but certainly did not have the intention of killing themselves.
And it seems like these families are having some success in places like right here in Texas, and there's also some proposed legislation in places like Ohio as well as Illinois.
Correct. The primary purpose of the family's push was to have what they call fentanyl poisoning awareness weeks or months, even actually in many states across the country, to really educate people about the association of fentanyl and poisoning, because fentanyl is so deadly and often occurs when you do not think it's going to be in a pill. But more importantly, in states like Texas and then in these other states, there has been a successful push to actually change the language on a death certificate, so that in Texas, when fentanyl is the leading cause of a death, medical examiners no longer use the word overdose, and they say death because of fentanyl toxicity or fentanyl poisoning.
And then lastly, Jan, although some of these families want to use the term poisoning, there are some who find that to be slightly problematic. Can you describe any of the hesitancy attached to that?
Yes, because unfortunately, they're longing for the term poisoning, which in many respects is an absolutely accurate term, scientifically as well. People succumb to a poison. Um, they are also giving in to the overall closed idea behind the word of overdose, so that people now often associate overdose with addiction, which is very stigmatized still, and some notion that the person is responsible for their own death because they took an illegal drug, and they don't want overdose associated with the person who was poisoned. Unfortunately, poisoning really is a, the more accurate term for all of the people who succumb to drug fatalities, because when you say some people were poisoned and some people overdosed, you're essentially creating two tiers of drug-related deaths. One essentially is more of a victim, and that's my dog weighing in. One is more of a victim, and the other is quote unquote to be blamed, which somehow seems like stereotyping and really unfair to the individual circumstances of what is just a tragedy regardless.
Jan Hoffman, thank you so much for your reporting in the New York Times, and thank you for taking time out to be with us today.